So, welcome to another edition of the Secure Dynamics TechCast. With me, I have a past guest, Lamont Orange, who is the CISO of Netscope. Welcome, Lamont.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Absolutely. And I have a new guest, Joshua Brown, who is the Director of Security Solutions at H&R Block and a career CISO. Welcome, Josh.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So we're going to talk about something that, Josh, I know you recently talked about this, which is metrics-based security. And specifically, you use the analogy of remaking InfoSec with DevOps kind of model. So talk a little bit about how you came about this topic, and number one. Number two, how have you seen this being implemented successfully?
Yeah, so I think it certainly wasn't something that I came up with. You know, Google has been pushing their site resilience engineering model, SRE model, for a while. My take is just kind of a riff on that. And what I was seeing was that, you know, lots of people want to do security. And my question was, well, how do you know if you're doing security right? It's not just, you know, we haven't suffered a major breach. I mean, first of all, you may not know whether you have or not. But, you know, we do a lot of different things. We use a lot of different tools. We have a lot of different processes. But are we measuring the things that really matter to the business? And is security lining up behind the business in a way that we can say, hey, look, the money you're investing in security is actually paying off. You're putting the money in the right place. We're being wise stewards of those resources, and we're doing things that are actually having a positive impact in what the business needs to do to be successful. To do that, you have to start measuring everything you do. And, you know, and my mantra around the team lately has been, if you're not measuring it, it's probably not worth doing. Now, that doesn't mean that everything we measure is going to be interesting to everyone. I hope everything we measure is going to be interesting to us. But, you know, we started to rethink everything that we did as with the mindset of, we are a service provider to the business. We provide security services. And the business should want to know how well we are delivering those services and what impacts those services are having. And so every service that we bring to the business, we have a start to finish process of onboarding, creating the metrics, dashboarding those metrics, you know, a constant OODA loop, if you like that terminology, or a constant feedback loop where we're looking for continuous maturation. And this helps inform just a whole variety of things that we do now in terms of forward forecasting, as well as retrospective, looking back and saying, you know, we thought this was a thing that was really important, but as it turns out, maybe we're spending an inordinate amount of money on something that doesn't have a solid positive return for the business, and we should stop doing that.
So that was going to be a follow-on question. So I'm going to switch to you, Lamont, about this, which is there are human biases, whether we like it or not, right? So if I've got my CISSP, that's what I want to really build my career on, right? So in some sense, the data might tell a story which is very different, like Josh alluded to. How do you get over that human bias and the need to constantly look at what the data is saying and the numbers don't lie, and be able to make the right choices, knowing that you might have to start from scratch and learn a brand new piece of technology and jettison something that you've been an expert for years?
So I think Josh has hit on something too that's very near and dear to my heart, and with the follow-up question as well. I would say we're really getting into security performance management at the end of the day. We had it for business processes. This is not anything conceptually new. And if you are a security leader looking at the dynamic transformation of our careers today, you have to understand that now that we fought very, very long and hard to get this seat at the table, now we have to talk in terms of the business. Now we have to talk in terms of efficacy. We have to talk in terms of what just doesn't work. And build that case and demonstrate that so that we can start over, or so that we can get to something that's more protective of the organization. And by far, as the organization is trying to reinvent themselves and get new additional revenue opportunities, well, we need to anticipate that and wrap our security programs around those business objectives. And that's even, you know, more of, I'll say, the friction between the legacy CISO and the CISO and the security professional that's modernizing themselves, is that, you know, I may have to disperse my teams back out into this DevOps philosophy, because we need to live where the action is happening. And we need to be able to report that, in Josh's terms, that the security that we're providing is either good enough or better than we were doing it before, given the platforms that are being created to innovate this business. And again, I've said it before in some of our other discussions, here's the opportunity, seize it. Transform yourself into a business of security. You are the GM of that service. So present that to the business in that manner.
Great, great perspective. So Josh, coming back to you, so based on what you mentioned earlier and the follow-on from Lamont, is there opportunity over here? We keep hearing about skills gap. We keep hearing about that there's a growing lack of talent. So is this an opportunity, again, taking the phrase out of Lamont's conversation, which is seize the moment? Is there a different mindset that needs to be applied using this current situation that we're all faced with to say, okay, maybe maybe the skills gap is there, but maybe you're looking for the wrong skills, or maybe the kind of people that you're looking for could be coming out of I don't know, could be history majors, philosophy majors, and other places, and then be able to train them, or are we truly entrenched in the way we're thinking about security, and there's only one path, which is forward?
That's a great question, and it's one that's near and dear to my heart too. So I came up in what I would say is a very non-traditional path, right? I was working on a PhD in philosophy when I made the switch to IT. You know, I have a lot of people on my team that have non-traditional paths, and actually we've been hiring more junior people and then training them, because, you know, even if you were trained in 3 or 4 different platforms and specific tool sets, those are going to be gone and changed, you know, multiple times during your career, right? So I always say, you know, the 2 things I look for when I'm hiring, I want to hire people that are smarter than me, you know, the smartest people I can find, and I want to find people that aren't sociopaths. And when I say that, people always tend to laugh a little bit, but honestly, you know, everything else can be taught. Those 2 things can't. And I need people that are going to work well together, are going to be flexible, are going to be hungry, and want to learn the newest things. You know, this model is, I think, absolutely new for a lot of people, because while a lot of security people are generally proficient in a couple of scripting languages, you know, and we're seeing more and more of them that come from the application development side, but there's a whole lot of legacy security people that didn't come from that background. And so thinking about service delivery in terms of you know, pipelines, infrastructure as code, being able to write API integrations, you know, all these things that we're seeing now as our tool sets become more interconnected with the tools and platforms that the business uses. Those skills are going to be absolutely critical. And so what I did is I designed a multi-tier team that starts with sort of a general, almost a legacy security operations focus. And then as people progress in their careers, they move into different tiers where you look to spend less and less of your time on sort of the toil activities and more on the time of automation, orchestration, and integration. But ultimately, the output is what really matters, right? And so, you know, my goal here is that radical transparency is going to drive radical accountability. And for once, I would love to see security be the model of the good corporate citizen in driving innovation and driving revenue.
Great. So one final question to both of you. I'll start with you, Lamont. What is the one thing that this pandemic has taught you that is something that's going to be muscle memory and going to move that forward, regardless of whether we live in this hybrid world or forever from home, if there's some term like that, or we go back to our old normal?
So I think in terms of what the pandemic has brought forward for me is something that we already knew. We knew automation was king, right? Mm-hmm. It's something that we were going to need in order to be able to scale to where the business was going. So what we've had happen to us is that everything has been catapulted, right? The business is reinventing themselves as we're talking today. You know, every industry is trying to figure out this niche and what the pandemic has presented to them as an opportunity. For security teams, I think we also have to do the same thing. And where we had plans, you know, very well laid out, and I've talked through some of those before, mm-hmm. that we're in a situation where, yeah, do we have the right resources? Do we have the right skills? Are we gonna stay in this hybrid model? Are we gonna run to the cloud? So in order to deal with that, because onboarding is very difficult, or it can be challenging for some in this model, we have to scale to meet the old responsibilities of our infrastructure and the new. And then there's this other thing too, that we have to make it better if we stay in this model.
Yeah.
And so now we got to look at some architecture and some design capabilities within our teams. So I think automation is going to allow us to free up some of those cycles and resources to start to continue to look forward and how to do it better. You know, how can we do our VPN better? Can we move to zero trust technologies? Can we actually move to the cloud successfully with the tools that we have? And we all know that the legacy tools doesn't do it. So there's a new stack. We got to move our stack to the cloud. So again, automating the old and what we have in that hybrid model, and then driving forward with this new architecture of how we put our stack in the cloud, I think is where we need to focus on. And being in this pandemic has accelerated, put it into great visibility for us, and saying that we have to do it now, or there will be consequences at the end of this road.
Yeah, same thing for you, Josh.
Yeah, Lamont, I could not agree with you more. I think, you know, automation is long been said is the force multiplier, right? And with human capital being so precious, you know, you want to keep your people happy once you get good people in, so you don't want to have the churn. And what I've found makes security people happy is getting to innovate, feeling like they're actually making a positive contribution to the business, feeling tied to the success of the company they work for. I think that, you know, zero trust is a huge, this has been a huge vote of confidence for that movement, because we went from having, you know, people who worked off the network occasionally to people who are working off the network continuously. And it's really causing the business to rethink how we look at on network versus off network, how we enable our workforce to be mobile, ultimately, so we don't care where they're working from. We know that we can secure what they're trying to do regardless of where they are. And I think, you know, this is going to continue to drive innovation in product, in process, in people, until we get it right, until, you know, security can really deliver the services around mobile workforce that the company is now not just viewing as a nice to have, but as an absolutely critical. You know, I don't see companies going back to the way things were before. And this is just going to accelerate the things that we were already working on in that space.
Great. Super conversation again. Thanks for your time, Josh, and thanks, Lamont, for continuously being part of this conversation. Stay safe, and looking forward to future conversations.
My pleasure. Thanks again.
You.